I really want to like Marvel's Avengers. I really do. Or should I say I really did, because honestly, at this point, I'm well and truly over it. What you're seeing here is me sitting down as the Hulk deciding that I've had enough of this game. The mission I'm in right now is called the Heroic Gauntlet. It's available once a week, kind of like a Destiny Nightfall, only there are 8 missions instead of 1, and you have to do each one after the other. If you do complete all 8, you get a chance at the best gear rewards in the game, which ultimately will more than likely be a bunch of drops with shit tier perks on them anyway. That's because the gear design in this game, combined with the game's RNG, makes getting the perfect set of perks on a set of gear practically impossible. Still, the Heroic Gauntlet gives you a chance at better gear, and since there's no other chance each week like this one, this is what you have to do, even if it's just a much longer version of the same repetitive, tedious content you've already played over and over before. But unlike what you've played over and over before, the Heroic Gauntlet takes the concept of tedious to a whole other level. I mean, in all honesty, it's extremely time disrespecting. For each of the 8 missions, you have to make it through 5 floors, which, depending on your challenge difficulty and the difficulty modifiers you get, it can take anything from 15 to 25 minutes to complete. That's upwards of 2 to 3 hours to complete all 40 floors, which is just insane for a chance to get maybe one exotic and some legendary gear with the very slim hope of good rolls on them. But anyway, that's Marvel's Avengers in-game for you, and if you want to play the in-game, the Heroic Gauntlet is the thing you're going to look forward to doing every week for that slim chance at that not-so-good gear. So here I am anyway, after more than 3 hours, and I'm currently at the final floor where I'm tasked with defeating all targets. Problem is though, the game won't spawn the enemies, leaving me with no targets to kill at all, making it literally impossible for me to progress. Now I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, suck it up, it's just a bug, it happens, just restart and you'll be fine. Well, I know that because I completed the Heroic Gauntlet last week, so I know it can be fine, but what you're seeing here is the restart. In fact, it's the 4th restart. That's why I'm now over 3 hours at this shit. My first attempt ended up with this awesome glitch where the screen just kept going in and out of black. I didn't know if the game was going to keep going or what was happening. It's such a weird glitch. I actually hadn't seen it before. I have no idea what's going on, but it was a game killer and I had to restart. In my second attempt, I made it to the final floor after about 20 minutes, but here's where that run came to an end. You jump in an elevator to go between floors, and the elevator to the final floor decided it was time to take the rest of the day off. It froze, and yeah, that was it for that run. So I had to restart again. And that brought me to my third attempt. In this final floor, after another 20 minutes, you have to kill all the enemies, but that's really hard to do if there aren't any enemies. The game is waiting for me to defeat all the targets, but it's giving me none to defeat, and since they didn't spawn, I had to restart again. But again, they didn't respawn in my second one, so to have the remotest of chances at completing this week's Heroic Gauntlet, I basically had to start from the beginning and play for another 20 minutes in the hope that that glitch wouldn't happen, or somehow start from the very start, which you can't do unless you've failed. So now this would be something that would be somewhat bearable if the mission was in some way unique compared to all others, with the potential to get a bunch of rare and enticing loot at the end, and if it wouldn't take half your life to complete it, but making it 40 floors is insane in and of itself without taking into account game halting bugs. Having to do 40 floors of the same shit over 2 to 3 hours, and at any point you might have to start all over again, you honestly fuck that entirely. A thread went up on Reddit recently with the title, "What's one thing that instantly ruins the game for you?" Not one answer in that thread was surprising to my experience, and by that I mean there wasn't just one answer, and that's because the game has a lot of problems. Players hate that there are too many enemies with ranged attacks, that you can get one-shotted from a distance without having a clue it was going to happen, that maps are repetitive, that the less than a handful number of bosses in the game are tedious to have to fight over and over, and you have to fight them every day if you want to chip away at the ridiculously low drop rate of polycoron, which is a key upgrade resource in the game. You can't upgrade your shit if you don't play the shit. And speaking of shit, holy shit man, the repetition of standard enemies is off the scale. Every mission you play there's an adaptoid, or there's an adaptoid. And oh look, an adaptoid, or a dreadbot, and a dreadbot, or an exo, and maybe an exo. And did I mention an adaptoid? Or did I mention a dreadbot? Or an adaptoid? And God, it just goes on and on and on, mission after mission, with all the different types of enemies in the game repeating constantly. Now they're cool enemies, don't get me wrong, but you see them over and over in nearly every mission. It makes all missions feel like they're the exact same mission. Matchmaking, not actually. Matchmaking is a real issue too. Not that that's surprising if Steam charts are anything to go by. Average players for the last 30 days only just topped 6,000, with a little over 2,000 being the peak for the last 24 hours. So yeah, there's no one to match with basically. And I think those numbers are a reasonable reflection of how people are feeling about all of the various problems the game has too. There's just so many problems to the point that if you can tolerate some of them, there'll likely be others that you just can't and you just won't play. And so lots of people aren't. And there are many of these issues I could bang on about here, like god-awful frame rate and arguably the worst camera in any game ever and so on. But here's the thing, the actual character gameplay is fun. That's why I stuck with this game from the start. I dumped Anthem after just 1 week and haven't thought about that game since. But Avengers to me seemed to have so much more potential than Anthem. The gameplay is just so much fun, especially once you unlock all the character skill trees, that you really can see what it could be. But if the bugs got ironed out and fresh content was regular enough, and this is a biggie I think, if Crystal Dynamics toned down the level of grind and time disrespect that the game is saturated with, starting with a fair and reasonable chance at getting decent loot, then maybe it would have a chance. I mean, with some of those things, even just a few of those things resolved in the short term, I would happily run around Hulk smashing to the tune of the game's killer soundtrack, and its soundtrack is awesome. Or doing whatever with whatever character, to be honest, because they're all fun to play. But now we're a month on and the game has had a handful of patches to address bugs, which is commendable, sure, but it seems for every hole in the bucket that gets plugged, another 2 open up. At least from my end, as each patch came in, the stability of my game just seemed to get worse. I had less crashes upon release than I do now, and from keeping an eye on Reddit and other places, I know I'm not the only one with that experience. As we speak, I know if I play Iron Man, the game will at some point completely crash my PS4 if I fly. Kind of a problem when, Iron Man flies. And it's not a pretty crash either. I've heard of people's PS4s having their entire system wiped by this, or just their Avengers save game completely scrapped. Not something I've personally experienced, but it's bloody concerning to hear about it, and especially when you get this blue screen error message warning you about your PS4 system, which I've had multiple times and every single session I've played Iron Man. If I play Hulk, the game freezes constantly. Usually it rights itself at some point, which is fine, but after the 100th freeze, it just gets old. But ultimately, when the only content worth playing each week is a major time sink that also suffers endless glitches, you're pretty much left with an unstable mess that is nothing but a frustrating time sink of an experience. It all grates on you to the point where you just have to ask yourself, why am I bothering to stick with this? Sorry, but potential just isn't enough. A might be one day just isn't enough. There's so many good games to play. So yeah, there are aspects of Avengers that are fun, but even for someone like me who really wanted to get into the end game of this, there's just too many things overshadowing what is the fun part of it. The state of the game right now just isn't good enough. So I'm out. Anyway, that's it. That's my rant about the Avengers. I wish I could enjoy the game, but it is what it is, I guess. I'd like to know your take though. Are you going to keep playing despite the game's current state? If not, will you come back in the future, or are you just giving up on it completely? Or have you seen all the videos and decided to save your money and not buy it at all? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really interested. I don't think I'll come back to the game. I don't think I can face the grind in this game again. But, maybe if enough people say that it's been fixed and it's been improved in a year's time, and I don't see it happening any faster than that, then maybe I might take another look. But for now, I'm out.